So, good morning, dear students. We meet once again for our English literature class, and I hope all of you are doing fine, that you are safe and away from the global pandemic. Let us all pray that this phase gets over very soon. So, now today we are going to take up the short story, The Story of an Hour. And the author is on your screen. She is Kate Chopin, and this is the black and white photograph of Kate Chopin, and The Story of an Hour is part of your syllabus for ISC. And let's take the short story up today and let us discuss what is there in the story. So before I begin with the story, I have just shown you on the screen the photograph of Kate Chopin, the author. Let me also show you the artistic representation or an artist's illustration of the main character of the story, that is Mrs. Mallard. See, this is Mrs. Mallard as drawn by an artist. Since she's not a real character, she's just a fictional character, an artist has done this beautiful illustration. You can see Mrs. Mallard sitting inside her room, looking out of the window and looking at nature outside. She has just been given the news of the death of her husband in an accident. After that, she has locked herself up in her room and she's sitting near the window and she's looking outside. See, this short story is basically about Mrs. Mallard and what goes on in her mind. So let us now take up the story. Let's see when Kate Chopin wrote this story. The story of an hour, was written by Kate Chopin in the year 1894. So we are reading something which is pretty old, more than 100 years old, written in the Victorian era, and so we are dealing with a Victorian society when we are reading the text of this short story. So now let's take out our textbooks and open on The Story of an Hour by Kate Chopin. On your screen is the text, and I'm going to read and explain a little bit so that you can understand. Knowing that Mrs. Mallard was afflicted with a heart trouble, great care was taken to break to her as gently as possible the news of her husband's death. Mrs. Mallard, whose painting you just saw, she was suffering from heart disease, and so when the news had to be given about her husband's death, it was done with lot of care, so that it did not give her a shock and did not cause her to suffer a heart attack. It was her sister Josephine who told her. You see, Josephine is Mrs. Mallard's sister. And how did Josephine reveal the news to her? In broken sentences, veiled hints. Veiled means covered with a veil, hinting at, not directly saying but indirectly, going around and coming to the point slowly. So with veiled hints that revealed in half concealing, half hiding and half revealing, in this manner Josephine tells her. Her husband's friend Richards was there too, near her. So who had brought in the news? Her husband's friend Richards. He was also there, present in the house. It was he who had been in the newspaper office when intelligence, or the news, intelligence here means the knowledge or the news of the railroad disaster was received. So there had been a rail accident. Exactly how is not revealed here, but Richards went to the newspaper office from where he got the information that Mr. Mallard had died in that rail disaster. What was Mr. Mallard's full name? Brentley Mallard, with Brentley Mallard's name leading the list of killed. He had only taken the time to assure himself of its truth by a second telegram, and had hastened to forestall any less careful, less tender friend in bearing the sad message. So, as soon as Richards came to know, he waited for a confirmation. So, he got a second telegram and he was sure that Brentley Mallard, his friend, was dead, had died in the railway accident. He quickly hurried to go to Brentley Mallard's house and tell his wife before any other stupid person directly went and told Mrs. Mallard that her husband had died. So there was a way of doing this, slow and easy, especially with someone with a heart problem. So he rushed to Brentley Mallard's house. She did not hear the story, as many women have heard the same, with a paralyzed inability to accept its significance. So when Richards revealed the fact, Mrs. Mallard was not ready to listen to all the details. In her place, any other woman would have been sitting shocked and paralyzed and listening to all the details. But she just heard this much, that her husband had died. That was enough for her. She did not want to listen to the details. She wept at once with sudden wild abandonment in her sister's arms. What did she do? She broke down and started crying in her sister's arms. Who is the sister? Josephine. When the storm of grief had spent itself, so the sudden effect of the grief came like a storm and affected her, but it went away for a while. After a little while, she went away to her room alone. She said she wanted to be alone, and she went to her room and locked herself inside the room. She sank, pressed down by a physical exhaustion that haunted her body and seemed to reach into her soul. She could see in the open square before her house. That is where that painting comes in. She's inside her room, sitting near the window, and that's open square before the house, that open area before her house. She can see through the window the tops of trees that were all aquiver, all moving, quivering. That means the breeze was blowing outside, and so the leaves in the trees were quivering with new spring life. The delicious breath of rain was in the air. See, she's appreciating all these natural aspects. How can a woman, doesn't it strike you at this stage, how can a woman have time to observe so many details of nature and think about them? That means she was not genuinely upset. In the street below, a peddler was crying his wares. Who is a peddler? One who goes around selling things by walking. So kind of hawker. So when he goes around to sell things, he has to cry out from time to time to draw the attention of his customers or people living in the streets. So the peddler's voice was also coming in through the window. The notes of a distant song which someone was singing reached her faintly. At a distance, somebody was singing in some other house down the street, and that song was also reaching the ears of Mrs. Mallard. And countless sparrows were twittering in the eaves. So, a lot of birds, these are ordinary sparrows, they were twittering away in the roof corners. Eaves are the edges of the roofs of different buildings. There were patches of blue sky showing here and there through the clouds that had met and piled one above the other in the west, facing her window. She sat with her head thrown back upon the cushion of her chair, quite motionless, except when a sob came up into her throat and shook her. So she relaxed in her chair, but then a sudden sob came up into her throat, and so she was shaken by it. Well, she is crying, no doubt. After all, her husband has died, but then she is not that sad as a woman or a wife should be. As a child who has cried itself to sleep continues to sob in its dreams. So she was crying like that. The sob was coming in repeated intervals, and just like a child, when the child falls asleep but is still crying in the sleep. So something like that. She was young, Mrs. Mallard. She was young. She was a young woman with a fair, calm face. She had a beautiful face and a very peaceful looking appearance, whose lines bespoke, the lines on her face revealed revealed the repression and even a certain strength. So, on one hand, from her face, you could make out that she was undergoing some kind of repression, but at the same time, she had certain strength in her. But now there was a dull stare in her eyes. Dull because she was not sure as to what was to be done with life. Whose gaze was fixed away off yonder. Yonder means over there. On one of those patchy patches of blue sky. So she was looking away outside her window into the sky. The sky was blue and she was looking far away into the sky. It was not a glance of reflection. She was not thinking about something, but rather indicated a suspension of intelligent thought. So reflection is thinking of a different kind and intelligent thought is different kind. Reflection means when you think about ordinary things which have happened repeatedly, that is reflection. But intelligent thought is when you think ahead, when you think about the future, not about something which has already occurred, but about what is lying ahead of you. So you could make out from her face that she was doing some intelligent thought. There was something coming to her and she was waiting for it fearfully. Something was coming to her and she was waiting for it. What was it? She did not know. It was too subtle, too clever and elusive to name. So something which was coming to her, it was coming like a reality, a thought about her future hereafter. It was trying to come to her, but she could not give it a name. It was so subtle and so elusive, means it was trying to avoid her or skip from her, escape from her whenever she was trying to catch hold of it. But she felt it, but she could feel it, creeping out of the sky, reaching toward her through the sounds, the scents, the color that filled the air. That means everything around her, whatever she was seeing and hearing, seemed to be suggesting something about her future. That Mrs. Mallard, get ready. A new day is beginning in your life. New scope, new opportunity. Now you are free. Now you are no longer married to Brentley Mallard. He's dead, gone. It's your life now. Entirely yours. You're fully free. So now her bosom, her chest rose and fell tumultuously. What happens when you are excited? Your breathing, rapidity with which you breathe increases. So that is happening. She's excited about something which is coming up in her life now. She was beginning to recognize this thing. Now she was able to recognize slowly, easily, gradually. Recognize this thing that was approaching to possess her, that was trying to catch hold of her. When she abandoned, possess her, and she was striving to beat it back with her will. So she was not really accepting it, but then it was coming towards her. As powerless as her two white, slender hands would have been, when she abandoned herself, a little whispered word escaped her slightly parted lips. She tried to fight it off, but she could not. This overwhelming thing was finally upon her, and so, in a whisper from her mouth, from her parted lips, came out a few words. What were those words? She said it over and over under her breath. Free, free, free. The vacant stare and the look of terror that had followed it went from her eyes. They stayed keen and bright. Her pulses beat fast, and the coursing blood warmed and relaxed every inch of her body. She did not stop to ask if it were or were not a monstrous joy that held her. Tremendous joy suddenly came upon her. She was free. Every nerve, every vein in her body seemed to feel it. A clear and exalted perception enabled her to dismiss the suggestion as trivial. At first, she thought it was something ordinary. She wanted to dismiss it. She knew that she would weep again when she saw the kind, tender hands folded in death. Whose hands? Brentley Mallard's. when he is laid in his coffin with his hands crossed upon his breast, about to be put into his grave. She knew that when she saw it, she would cry. She knew it. She's going through a phase of turmoil. She wanted to be faithful and loving as a wife to her husband who is now dead. She wanted to cry for him, but at the same time, this overwhelming thought about her freedom was affecting her. She was trying to push it away, but it would simply not be pushed away by her hands or from her mind. So, the face that had never looked save with love upon her, fixed and grey and dead. Brently Mallard actually loved her. He had always looked at her with love in his face, but she had not been able to love him as much as he loved her. This was the problem between the man and his wife. So she would weep, no doubt. Being a woman, weeping comes easy for her, but then all weeping, sobbing or crying would not actually help her get rid of her feeling of freedom. It would still be on her. But she saw beyond that bitter moment a long procession of years to come that would belong to her absolutely. Beyond this death, all this will get over. The burial will take place. He will go to his grave, and then she will be all by herself. The years, because she was young. Husband died because of an accident. So death can occur any time to anyone. So it's not necessary that a person has to grow old before he dies. So she has her entire life before her after he is gone. And those years would belong to her entirely, absolutely. And she opened and spread her arms out to them in welcome. She finally welcomes this freedom with open arms. There would be no one to live for during these coming years. A woman has to live for her husband. Woman has to live for her children, and she never lives for herself. But now it's going to be only herself, she herself. And she does not have kids. They were probably not married for very long, and she was already suffocating in this relationship. And now she is a free woman. So she wouldn't have to live for anyone. She would live for herself. There would be no powerful will bending hers in that blind persistence with which men and women believe they have a right to impose a private will upon a fellow creature. So, this imposing one's own thoughts and ideas and wills on another, this concept of making women subordinates, when society is like that, when men dominate the society, this is what happens. But now the dominating factor, the man in her life, is gone. A kind intention or a cruel intention made the act seem no less a crime as she looked upon it in that brief moment of illumination. What is this illumination? This realization that now she is free, brightening up in her mind. And yet she had loved him. Sometimes, see, yet she had loved him. There is a dash. Sometimes, not always. She had loved him because he was her husband. She had loved him because society expected her to love her husband. Well, that was an understanding. That was a contract. That was not really pure love, 100% love. Sometimes. Often she had not. What did it matter? Anyway, that doesn't matter now anymore. What could love, the unsolved mystery, count for in face of this possession of self-assertion, which she suddenly recognized as the strongest impulse of her being? Well, she is possessed by this impulse that she is now free. Now love has nothing to do with that. All that is past, gone, over, free. body and soul free. Marriage is over. Marriage involves both body and soul. But now she's free. Now this body is entirely hers. Her soul is also entirely hers. She kept whispering. She's saying this to her repeatedly. First she said free, free, free. And now she's saying free, body and soul free. She kept on saying this. Josephine was kneeling before the closed door with her lips to the keyhole. Josephine, her sister. She was outside the door. She had locked herself inside her room. And so, through the keyhole, so that her voice could reach inside the room, Josephine was kneeling down before the door and speaking through the keyhole for admission, for being allowed to come inside the room. Louise opened the door. So we know her name now. Mrs. Mallard's full name is Mrs. Louise Mallard. Louise, open the door. I beg, open the door. You will make yourself ill. What are you doing, Louise? For heaven's sake, open the door. Go away, I am not making myself ill. Who is saying this? Louise Mallard. Please go away, Josephine. I am not making myself ill. I'm okay, I'm all right. No, she was drinking in a very elixir of life through the open window. That open window was making her drink all the upcoming happy days and the pleasures of life. The juice of life, which she had never enjoyed before. The nectar of life was coming to her through that open window. So that open window, the birds, the blue sky, these are symbolic of her freedom. The sky is the limit for her now. The years that lie ahead are entirely hers. She can fly like those sparrows. She can consider the blue sky as her limit, which is limitless. So she was enjoying that. She did not want interruption. And Josephine was thinking that her sister will require her by her side. She is not well. She has a heart problem. Well, the paradox, the irony lies in the fact that she has a heart problem. She is young, but she has a heart problem. So this is going to be the turning point in the story. So her fancy was running riot along those days ahead of her. In her imagination, fancy means imagination. It was running riot, means it was in her imagination, she was enjoying those days already in her mind. The days which were lying ahead of her. Spring days and summer days and all sorts of days that would be her own. She breathed a quick prayer that life might be long. She is aware of the fact that she has heart problem. She makes a prayer to God. Oh God, let my life be long so that I can enjoy it now. It was only yesterday she had thought with a shudder that life might be long. Only the previous day she was thinking with a shudder. She was shivering. She was scared to think even that her life should be long. If it is long, then she has to suffer this lack of independence under her husband. And today she is hoping for something just the opposite. She wants her life to be long. She arose at length and opened the door to her sister's importunities. Sister is continuously calling her from outside, so finally she got up and opened the door. There was a feverish triumph in her eyes, and she carried herself unwittingly like a goddess of victory. She clasped her sister's waist, and together they came down the stairs. She was feeling like a goddess who has become victorious. Richards, you remember Richards? We talked about him earlier. Friend of Bentley Mallard was standing, waiting for them at the bottom of the staircase. And at that very moment, this is the final twist in the story coming up. Someone was opening the front door with a latch key. The door was closed, so somebody was opening it from outside with a latch key. It was probably locked. So The door latch is supposed to be the handle which you press down, and underneath there is a keyhole where you put the key and turn, and then it opens. It was Brentley Mallard who entered. Imagine. Oh my goodness. And everybody thought he was dead, but he was not. He came back. A little travel-stained, composedly carrying his gripsack and umbrella. He was carrying his bag and his umbrella. He looked a bit tired because he had been traveling. He had been far from the scene of the accident and did not even know that there had been one. So, Brentley Mallard says, I have no idea that there has been an accident. In fact, I was not even there. I was somewhere else, he says. He stood amazed at Josephine's piercing cry. He was amazed to see her sister-in-law scream so happily to see her. Josephine's piercing cry. At Richard's quick motion to screen him from the view of his wife, Richards immediately tried to hide him behind him by coming in front of Brentley Mallard, because they knew that something bad would happen now. They could sense it. But Richards was too late. What happened? What happened to Louise Mallard? She saw her husband, got the biggest shock, and suffered a severe heart attack and collapsed. When the doctors came, they said that she had died of heart disease, of joy that kills. What will the doctor say? The doctor comes, checks her body, says that she has suffered a massive heart attack. And why did she suffer the heart attack? To the world, the reason is that she was so happy to see her husband alive again. Whereas she was crying, she was thinking that her husband had died. He was actually alive and standing before her. To the world, that is the picture given. Everybody thinks that. But what was going on in Louise Mallard's heart is only known to us. We know the actual reason as to why she died. She did not die because of the joy that kills, but the shock of going back to her usual life dominated by her husband. It is that shock. It is that realization which actually takes her life. But the world will never know. Josephine will never know. Richards will never know. Even Mr. Brentley Mallard will never know. Or even the doctor would never know. The whole world would not know at all that Louise Mallard died because she was shocked and upset, not because she was joyful to see her husband. So that's it. With that, we come to the end of the text. I'm posting a voice message also explaining Mrs. Mallard's character to some extent, and then I'll be asking you to do some answers. I'll give you the questions after this. Thank you very much.